Welcome to QApedia, and this is our blog qapedia.com. Today the topic that we are going to cover is JavaScript tutorial functions in JavaScript, and the subtopics that we will cover are functions in JavaScript, what is function, importance of functions, types of functions, how does function operate, syntax of definition of function, syntax for calling a function, example, and then summary of the session. So let's see functions in JavaScript. So before understanding functions in JavaScript, let's take an example of a case where we have to add two numbers multiple times. Then what can we do? You might say that we can write the code to add two numbers that many times. Like if suppose we have to add two numbers 5 times, then we can write the code 5 times. Or what we can do, or we can use loops. And yes, we can do all those things, but we have a better alternative as well, and that alternative is function. So how is function a better alternative of loops? We will see that in this particular session, but let's understand first what is a function. What is function? So as the name says, function, it means it does something. So how does a function do something? So function is a piece of code. That means function is a program and it does what we have written inside it. Whatever program, whatever code we have written, same thing it is going to do. So if we have written a program or function for adding two numbers, then it is going to add two numbers. If suppose we have written a function for subtracting two numbers, then it is going to subtract two numbers. So function is a piece of code or program which is written separately and is reused whenever it is needed. So you might find this particular definition difficult for now, or maybe you will not understand much for now, but you just leave it and try it, and as the session will go, we will understand this better. And now we get a question that why do we need a function? So we have some benefits of using function, and let's see those benefits and importance of function. So benefits and importance of functions are, we don't need to write the code repeatedly again and again. We can just write it once and use it whenever we want. Then if suppose we are repeating a code again and again instead of writing a function, then there is a chance that we will copy and paste it everywhere. And if suppose we have done some mistake in the beginning itself, then that mistake will be repeated in each and every copied code. And then what will happen? We will have to correct it everywhere. But if suppose we are using function, then we just need to correct it inside the function. That's it. We can pass parameters in function. So sometimes people can say that loops can also be used for repeatability, but we cannot configure loops for parameters like function. Functions can be configured for parameters, but loops cannot be. Then functions can be used as a black box as well for those people who are not proficient in coding much. So functions can be used as a black box for them. Then functions are used to organize the code in JavaScript. We can organize the code in JavaScript using functions. Let's see types of functions. So we have four types of functions. Functions with no parameters and no return type. Then we have functions with parameters and no return type. Then we have functions with no parameters but some return type. Then we have functions with parameters and with return type. So we have this type of four type of functions. Now how does function operate? So we have two parts in function. First is the definition of function. Second is calling a function. So definition of function, it's a part where we write a block of code. That means we write our program there, and that means we define our function there. So because we are defining our function, that is called definition of function part. Then we have calling a function part. In this part, what happens? We are going to use the function which we have already defined. So this is the part where we do definition of function, and after defining the function, this is the part where we use our function which we have already defined. Then let's see the syntax of definition of function, that how do we define a function. So first syntax we will see for first type of function, the function with no parameters and no return type. So syntax for function with no parameters and no return type. So first thing that we have to use is function keyword, and then we have to use a function name, and then parenthesis. Inside parenthesis we are not passing anything because it is no parameters. Then we will write curly braces, and then we'll write some block of code, and then we'll write here curly braces again, and there is no return type, so we are not returning also anything. So let's see example for this in our VS Code. So first thing that we have to use is function keyword, so we will use function keyword. Then we have to use some name, so we'll write name as add or some or anything we can use. Then curly braces, and then now curly braces, and that's it. This is how we write function. Now we can write some block of code here, so I'm just commenting block of code, or we can do one thing, we can write some statement console dot log and 3 plus 4, something like this we can write. So this is how function with no parameters and no return type syntax we write. Then syntax for function with parameters and no return type. That means what is going to happen here, we are going to pass some parameters. So everything is same. If you see this and see this, everything is same. Function keyword is there, some name of the function, and inside this parenthesis we are passing parameters, but rest everything is same. So just passing parameters has changed. So what parameters we are passing here, let's see that. Let's go inside, and suppose we are passing some parameters like x comma y, and what we are doing here in console.log we'll write x plus y. So this is how our function with parameters and no return type will look like. Example. So this was the syntax and this is the example. Then now syntax for function with no parameters but it has some return type. So it is going to be same thing, function, then function name, then parenthesis, then curly parenthesis, and then block of code and some value that we are returning. So for that we will use a keyword called return, and then the value that we are going to return. So let's see this also. So parameters we will remove, no parameters, and we will write some code here. Let c is equals to 1 plus 2, because we are adding two numbers. So let's c equals to 1 plus 2, and then return c, because this is an example for, this is a syntax for return function with return type. So we have to return something, return some value. So this is how we can return. Then at the end we have a syntax for function with parameters and with return type. So here also same thing is there. We'll write a keyword called function, then function name, and then inside we'll write some parameters, then some block of code, and now because it is returning something, so some return value will be there. Okay, parameters and return type both are there. So we'll do one thing, we'll write here x comma y, and then c equals to x plus y and return c. So this is going to be the function for function with parameters and return type. Now let's see how do we call a function. Syntax for calling a function. So let's go to our first function where we have no parameters and no return type, and we are just typing some printing something console dot log and 2 plus 3 will write here. So this is how our function will be. Now if suppose I will run this code, so we'll go here, run. Now what is happening? Nothing is happening. We have written here console.log 2 plus 3, so it should print the value of 2 plus 3, which is 5, but it is not printing. So what we have to do, we have to call this function also. So we will, how do we call it? We'll just write the name of the function, add parenthesis, and then we will add a semicolon here. And that's it. Now if suppose I will just save it, and then if suppose I will run it, then it is writing 5. If suppose we will change it to 4, and then we save it, and then if we run it, then it is going to print 6. This is how our functions will work. So that's why calling a function is very important. Until or unless we call, we cannot use a function. So function has to be invoked explicitly. Now if suppose some parameters are there, then what will happen? Let's see that as well. So if suppose some parameters are x comma y, and here we are doing x plus y, fine. So we have to pass some parameter here. So we'll pass some parameter 3 comma 5, and that's it. Now let's save it, run without debugging. So it is printing 8. 3 comma 5 equals to 8. So this is how we call a function with parameters and without parameters. So same thing we have seen in the example. Now let's say that I have to add two numbers 5 times. Then what can we do? We can write the code something like this: console.log 2 plus 3, console.log 2 plus 3, console.log 2 plus 3. We can write like this. So let's copy it and then write it here, and just save it and run it. So we are getting 5 times 5 5 5 we are getting. So but does it make sense? It doesn't make any sense, because we might have to write this 100 times, or we might have to write 1000 times also. So what should we do? We might use loops for this. We have seen how do we use loops. I don't want to show this again. So we can use loops also, and loops will be used something like that, and it is going to print the same thing. But in spite of using loops, instead of using loops, we can use function. Function is a better alternative of loops. So how can we write function? We'll just copy it. We have already seen this, but let's do it again. Function add, and then yeah, so this function keyword we have is then the name, and then curly braces, and here inside we'll write some console dot log and 2 plus 3, and that's it. Now what happens? We want to call it 5 times, so we'll do one thing, add, and then just copy it 5 times here, and if we copy it 5 times here, it will be called 5 times. So let's save it, and after saving it, run it again. So it is printing 5 times. But what if I want to change the value? If I want to change from 2 plus 3 to 3 plus 4, then I can do it in just in this function, and then I just need to save it and I can go and run it without any problem. But if suppose I would have written like this, then what would have happened? I have to change 2 plus 3 to 3 plus 4 every time. I have to change here also, I have to change here also, I have to change here also. So that's why functions are like, I need to change the value only at one place. We have seen that also in importance of function, that uh, if suppose we repeat the code again, and instead of writing a function, then there is a chance that we will copy paste it everywhere, and if suppose we have done some mistake or we want to change something, then we will have to correct it everywhere in the code. But in function, we just need to correct it in function, that's it, no problem at all. So that is the importance of function. But again some question happens that what we are doing right now, it's only about it's the problem of solving repeatability. So problem of repeatability can be solved using loops as well, right? So a function has solved our problem of code repeatability and code modifying, but we might get a question that this kind of thing can be done using loops also. Okay, so why are we using function? Why can't we use loops? So the answer here is parameters. Now the function is always printing the value of 3 plus 4, which is 7, but if suppose we want to add different numbers every time and we want to print the addition of those numbers, then loops cannot do that, and that's why we use functions with parameters in this case. So loops cannot be configured for parameters, but function can be configured for parameters. So we have seen that advantage as well, that we can use parameters in the functions and loops cannot be configured for parameters. So let's do that thing. Yeah, this is how we'll write our function for parameters. So now function for parameter will be like something that we'll have to pass parameters x comma y, and here we'll write console x plus y. Now while calling the function, we will have to pass parameters. So first we'll pass 2 comma 3, second time we'll pass 3 comma 3, then we'll pass 5 comma 8, sorry 9, then we'll pass 5 comma 6, then we can pass 2 comma 2. So every time we are passing different values. If we are passing different values every time, then the result also will be different every time. So let's save it and let's run it. So see, 5 6 14 11 4. Like this we can use our functions for functions with parameters. So we have called this function like this. Now we can write this function for return type also. So instead of printing, we'll write here let c is equal to x plus y, and then we will say return the value of c. That's it. So what we'll do, so yeah, function is written, we have written the return type also, and we have written parameters as well. Now let's do one thing, let's save it and then run it. But nothing is getting printed here, right? Because console.log is not written anywhere. So what we can do, we can write console.log here. Console dot log, and then we can give a parenthesis here. Then we can copy the same thing here. And now let's save it and then run it. Now it is printing the value. So this is how we can use our functions with return type as well. So this was all about functions, and we have different types of functions like arrow functions, and other functions are also there. We'll discuss those functions in our coming sessions. So let's see the summary of the session. So we have discussed the topics in today's sessions, like what is function, importance of function, types of functions, how does function operate, syntax of definition of function, syntax of calling a function, and then examples. So that's it in the session. Thank you very much.